All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a special meeting of the Halton District School Board for Wednesday, March 18th, 2022. As per the current public health recommendations, we are meeting remotely this afternoon. However, with the new shift in direction, this too will be something we will need to examine in moving forward. As this is somewhat of a compacted agenda, we should only need to use the hands up function for speaking and voting. However, I have included the Google form for comfort. A speakers list should come up on the side of your screen. However, I'll try to give an account of the order that may be building so people who are wanting to speak will be able to prepare their questions in advance. As always, I ask trustees to direct all questions through the chair. And today, more than ever, let's be cognizant of the meeting rules of the road that we signed back when our term began, particularly being tough on the issues and gentle on the people. Okay, I'm going to take roll call. And again, today we'll go for the traditional alphabetical order. Trustee Amos.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Trustee Bao.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Trustee Collard.
Good afternoon.
Trustee Daniele has had a funeral to attend, so she sends her regrets. Vice Chair Al Harrison.
Hello, everyone. I'm here.
Oh, awesome. Trustee Garrett. I know she might be joining later through the telephone. Trustee Gray.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Trustee Grabantz.
Good afternoon.
Trustee Oliver.
Hello, everyone.
Trustee Reynolds.
Hi, everyone. I'm here.
Trustee Rocha, due to prior commitments, is not here yet, but is hoping to join us later. And Trustee Vigilankara.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone. Director Ennis, could you let us know which staff are in attendance?
Thank you so much, Chair Shuttleworth, and good afternoon, everyone. We have a full slate of senior staff here this afternoon to support this meeting. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Today, Trustee Collard will be honoring the land.
Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Attawadron, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us.
Thank you, Trustee Collard. Are there any declarations of possible conflict of interests? Seeing none, since this is a special board meeting, there are no opportunities to adjust the agenda. I'm sorry, did I miss Trustee Reynolds on the attendance? I'm sorry.
No, you got me.
I did. Okay, thank you. So our only item for discussion for this afternoon is the ministry guidance. Superintendent Blackwell has been in discussion with Dr. McGanney, the Chief Medical Officer of Health, and the Commissioner for the Halton Region Health Department. I want to take this opportunity on behalf of all the trustees to thank her for all that she's done. Superintendent Blackwell, you have always been able to give us a great understanding of how the directions given to us by the ministry are impacting schools and all the work you've done to keep our students and staff safe. We appreciate all that you have done and how you've been able to explain it to us in a way that we are able to understand, allowing us to communicate well with our communities. I know you have new information which relates to the most current update from the ministry and how it impacts the safe return of students and staff to the school after March break. Director Ennis, before I pass the mic over to Superintendent Blackwell, would you like to speak?
Thank you so much, Chair Shuttleworth, and good afternoon. Yes, I would like to just make a few opening remarks before turning it over to Superintendent Blackwell. During the past 2 years, the pandemic has just exhausted students, families, and staff. We've had to become agile and flexible in response to directives from the Office of the Chief Medical Officer of Health and the province, all the while working very closely with our own public health unit in Halton. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Magani and her team for being such amazing partners in the work with us to keep students and staff safe with the best possible guidance and information that they have. I'd also like to thank Superintendent Blackwell for being ever vigilant in keeping the senior team and the board updated on the latest public health information. We are grateful that at every turn, we were able to consult with public health on important matters on how we put into operation the guidance and directives that we receive. On March 9th, Directors of Education received a lifting of health and safety measures in schools memo from the ministry, which stated, based on advice from the Office of the Chief Medical Officer of Health and in alignment with community measures, the province is returning schools to a more normal learning environment while maintaining protective measures like rapid test, ventilation improvement, screening, and continued access to free PPE for students and staff. This direction, as one can reasonably imagine, has created or entrenched polarizing positions of those who are relieved and those who are incensed. How does one reconcile the request to continue mandatory masking with the rejoicing that it is no longer mandatory in certain circumstances? As a board, we have maintained and adhered to the directions of the province, the Office of the Chief Medical Officer of Health, and our public health unit. Our position to this latest directive remains consistent with our past practice. As Superintendent Blackwell will tell you, there will still be circumstances where masking is required and others where it is not. These nuances, of course, gets lost in the polarization that I mentioned previously. One of our greatest challenges as a board with respect to this issue is how do we create the conditions in our schools and our board facilities that will respect the rights of individuals and families as laid out by the province, while simultaneously respecting the rights of those who choose to continue wearing masks even though it's not mandated. In keeping with our multi-year plan, as director and senior team, we strongly ask that all leaders create a welcoming and inclusive environment where equity and respect for each other's position is the order of the day. We ask for patience and understanding as we move towards a more normal learning environment. Some things will take time to return to normal, while we need to examine whether or not we should even return some things to normal, or whether we should abandon some of the things we previously considered normal. This, of course, will take time, it will take conversation, and it will take consultation. As director, I have all confidence that the Halton District School Board will respond to this latest directive as we have to all others, and that is with grace, with kindness, with patience, and a strong sense of inclusion and belonging. And with that, I'll turn it over to Superintendent Blackwell.
Thank you, Director Ennis. Well said. And I just want to acknowledge as well that it's not myself that is implementing all of this. It's the work being done in schools, our staff, our families, and our students who have continued to care for each other. I don't think that will change. As mentioned by Director Ennis, the changes that are laid out by the Ministry of Education in consultation with the Chief Medical Officer of Health are informed by key public health indicators such as positivity rates, hospitalization admissions, and vaccination rates. And Halton's case rates and health system indicators are very similar to the province. So in consultation with Dr. Magani, we will follow those recommendations as our indicators are similar to the provincial indicators, which are the basis of the changes. I think it's really important to note that in Halton, 91% of eligible Halton residents that are 5 and older have received at least 1 dose of the vaccine, and 87% have at least 2 doses. As a board, we will continue to follow the guidance that's provided to us. We've always messaged that. I think As trustees will be very much aware when questions have come to them or to schools in the past, we have never varied from the direction that's provided to us. We have provided our rationale with the guidance and also with consultation with our local public health unit. Director Ennis did mention the masking guidance and the updates to the guidance. And I think it's really important to recognize that masking is still going to be required for multiple situations. Some of it is not changed, but it was never really articulated because we were wearing masks anyway. So anyone who tests positive for COVID-19 or is a presumed case, so where you're symptomatic, you're presumed to have COVID, you are to continue to wear a mask until day 10, even after your isolation requirements are met, if most of you are isolating for 5 days. So that's a requirement, and we will see staff and students in our buildings wearing masks and adherence to that requirement. As well, where there's a a household member in your home, and obviously, or a close contact with COVID-19, again, a presumed or test confirmed case. Even if you are not required to isolate, you must wear a mask in school for 10 days. And 10 days being obviously includes weekends. And then the biggest one is the 14 days upon return from international travel. So we will be messaging our families just to clarify that. And again, the guidance for the first two that I mentioned around close contact or household member or someone that has completed isolation requirements, that is not changed. It just was never highlighted because when they returned to school, they always had masks on. So our schools will continue to be mask-friendly environments, and this includes recognizing that there will need to continue to be mask breaks for students. The school screening tool has been updated regarding isolation requirements, and students and staff will be expected to continue the daily screening. It's really important for families and staff and students to follow the direction provided to them at the end of the screening tool, and it will articulate the masking requirements as well as the isolation requirement. Above all, something that our schools have seen a community commitment to is the direction to stay home when you're sick. And that is not changed. And we know that we have our families and our staff are very versed in that expectation. Rapid antigen tests, they continue to be available, as Director Ennis mentioned, for students and for staff. Our staff, while not required to continue to wear protective equipment, PPE, will continue to be supplied by the ministry until the end of the school year, should they wish to use it. Our enhanced cleaning protocols in our schools will also continue. We know that our students and our staff are very versed in hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette. That will continue. Students can feel really confident in returning to the same familiar classrooms that they left prior to spring break. We want to make sure that when students return on Monday, and our staff, that there's some stability and predictability in terms of how they're arriving to school. So our seating plans will remain as they were prior to spring break. Now, that does provide flexibility for movement with the new guidance to support group work. And we'll be talking to our administrators on Monday as well. Our classroom seating and learning activities, I think this is really important, will not be organized by who is wearing a mask and who is not. I guess really the biggest piece is implementing that these updated measures will be done with sensitivity, with the mental health and well-being of our students and staff definitely a priority. Today, families and staff will receive communication that includes a letter from Dr. McGanny, who is our Halton Medical Officer of Health. We ask our families and our staff to review the information, and where there are questions, you know your children, you are staff members that know your school. Please reach out to your school and discuss those questions, because what happens in a school building, as we talked about earlier, it could look different from school to school, but we know that our school leaders and our school staff can support any concerns that you may have. I think it's also important for families to recognize that with the lifting of capacity limits and knowing the importance of returning to with some predictability, our schools, we've asked our schools not to rush. We've asked them to hold off on, whole school indoor assemblies. We'll get there in terms of events and assemblies. In the interim, we've asked that they take a pause and get everyone back in school and support the students and our staff with the new way of living in the COVID world, because it's still a COVID world. Above all, we look forward to welcoming our students and staff back on Monday, and we know that families and students and staff are excited to see each other, regardless of the updates with the guidance. They will continue to build on the relationships that they've already established. And I'd be happy to turn it over to any questions.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Blackwell. Are there any questions for Superintendent Blackwell from any of the trustees? Trustee Grevance.
Hi, thank you very much. Through the chair, I've been, of course, getting a lot of questions from the community. It's very, public health is a very polarizing topic. One thing though that, a couple things have come up. The first is that, of course, the communication that we've received from public health has very much focused on vaccination, and it is wonderful to see the vaccination rates that we have in Halton. But our students don't start school at 5. We have, of course, students that are younger than that and are ineligible. And I've been receiving communications from those parents who are very concerned about these changes, and they want to know what the board is doing because their child cannot be vaccinated, which is the #1 way to, help with COVID. What is the board doing to help keep their child limited in exposure to COVID?
All right, I'll jump right in. So through the chair to Trustee Grevance. Really great question, and I don't think that this is just a board responsibility in terms of keeping others safe. As I mentioned, the school screening tool, staying home when you're sick, we all have a responsibility to keep those around us safe, looking at the symptoms. We know that many students that are that age group are in kindergarten, unless they've skipped grades and we don't know about them. But those students in kindergarten, much of the learning is outdoors. There's an opportunity, as it's a beautiful day today, kids will be able to learn outdoors. We also know that last year, when there was a strong recommendation for masking in kindergarten, and it was not required, that many students did remain masked. And I think that's something we will see in our classrooms on Monday. We will see lots of students with masks on. So in terms of what that looks like in a classroom, again, reaching out to your child's school will be important to get that reassurance, ask about what learning will look like. I think it's important to be realistic and understand there will be kids in the classroom without masks on. There will be students learning in groups as they were last year. And again, it's really an onus on all of us to follow that screening every day. I think we're very versed in it. I think our 4-year-olds are very versed in what the symptoms are, and that we encourage students and families to follow that guidance and keep kids home when they're not feeling well, or if they come to school and someone at home they'll be staying home if they're under 5. So, there are lots of measures in place beyond masking that will continue and that definitely have an impact on keeping kids healthy.
Thank you. Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much through the chair. We have had a multi-layered approach to COVID with protocols, as everyone knows, with masking, distancing, cohorting, daily screening protections, and so on. Could you just review once again, Superintendent Blackwell, which of those layered approaches we continue to have? I think I just heard you say that we're going slow to go fast with regards to large gatherings indoors, such as an assembly. But could you talk to those other protocols that were in place, and are we continuing with them? Thank you.
Thanks for the question through the chair to Trustee Gray. So the letter will very much articulate that today, that families will receive. So I apologize if I miss anything. We know that cohorting will not continue. We know that distancing will not continue. We know that screening will continue. We know that hand hygiene practices and supplies will continue. We know that the ventilation, the emphasis on ventilation will continue in our schools. We've always said outdoor learning. That's not one that is articulated, but it's something that we do. We know that respiratory hygiene is included in that. We know that there's enhanced cleaning protocols that boards are expected to continue with. We have, the term is isolation room. Now schools have made that sound a little bit nicer to students, but where someone becomes symptomatic during the day, we have a whole protocol in place for that. That will continue. Active screening, our staff are very versed in knowing their students and also knowing when they're not feeling well and asking the questions. So active screening will continue. And students obviously active screen themselves throughout the day if they start to feel symptomatic during the day. There was something else I was thinking of. PPE again will be an option for staff, should staff feel that they choose to wear PPE. I think, rapid antigen test availability. And if you'll recall, approximately a month ago, or 2 months ago, we were given rapid antigen tests for all of our students and our staff. We then were given about 30% of our students and staff, and we have a lot of rapid antigen tests at school. So I'd remind families that should they request rapid antigen tests for their children, and our staff have access to them, they can continue to access those through their schools.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Trustee Collard.
Thank you. Through you to Superintendent Blackwell. So the timing of all of this seems awkward, and I know that it's not under our control. The timing of March break having just ended, and now all of a sudden we're going back into schools and we're saying you don't have to mask unless you fit in these particular categories. And I've heard from a number of parents a concern that, people might not know that they've got COVID. They come back to school, they're asymptomatic, and they think, I'm fine. I don't need to worry because I didn't go anywhere, but maybe I played with someone down the street and I got COVID. And so parents are, I think they have a justification for their concern that right after March break, we go into this position. And as I said, I know that that decision was not ours. What can we do as a board to make that part of the transition, going straight from March break to masks not being mandatory in school? How can we work with families who are feeling uncomfortable about that in this 2-week period after March break?
Thank you, Trustee Collard, and through the chair to Trustee Collard. I think every family is going to have a different need to be answered. I would encourage the communication with schools because not everyone has the same concerns or the same questions. That being said, the use of masking for international travelers is one piece that I think was very important for people that are returning. We know that COVID will continue to exist in our communities, and I think that's the reality. The provincial direction is that we will be living with COVID in Halton and in our nation and around the world. And so how do we continue to navigate, and how do we continue to stay safe? The vaccination rates are huge. We would encourage our families to continue to pursue vaccine opportunities. The Halton region has made them very much available for families over the break, and will be looking as well to continue that. The questions that families have in terms of how do we take that cautious approach, I think I mentioned around the whole school assemblies. We know that there are families, we know that some of the things that we've done, not just from a COVID perspective, but from an accessibility perspective and a convenience perspective in terms of some of the virtual opportunities. We know that families may not feel comfortable coming into the school for a meeting. So those opportunities will be provided and be continued to provided virtually. We have had, there's always the opportunity to reach out if you're in terms of comfort for a remote learning, a short-term piece. We have not received any requests for that, which I think speaks to the confidence in what we have within the system, and also the trust that we have between each other and the community in terms of keeping each other safe. So, we'd ask families for patience. We know that the visitor signs are coming off the door. This is a community and a staff, a student, and a family commitment to helping us come back and getting used to this new reality and embrace it. And also, temper some expectations in terms of, we've got people that want to run whole school movie events right now in schools, and they're really excited to have that opportunity, and they'll come. But we would ask for everyone's patience as we get closer to making that a reality.
Thank you for this response. I know that we've all gotten used to, in the last 2 years, change, and more change. And we've developed a whole new vocabulary about the pace of change. And keeping up with it sometimes is a scary thing for families. And so I do take some comfort in your response, and the fact that no parents have requested to go into a virtual arrangement for the next little while. That speaks volumes about their confidence, and I'm very appreciative of that, because I do think we need to start addressing the mental health issues, and I know that masking is one of those factors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Collard. Our next first-time speaker will be Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'd like to follow up on the thread of keeping families comforted as we move forward in this new reality. Could you clarify what measures are in place to ensure compliance of masking of students who are sent into school with a mask due to family choice or circumstance, or have been informed by the daily screening to mask for 10 days. So could you share with us what that looks like in a classroom?
Through the chair to Trustee Reynolds, could you clarify what you mean by compliance?
So compliance meaning a parent may have had a conversation with their child about they have to wear a mask today. We've got illness in the home, or we have to wear a mask today because that's our choice, or we have to wear a mask because the daily screening says we do for 10 days. So they go into school. So what happens then if the child decides to remove their mask?
So through the chair to Trustee Reynolds, I think it's really important to recognize that this is not a school responsibility alone. We always work with our families, and this continues to be an important, working together. Families need to have these conversations with their children or their students and talk about the importance of following the guidance as kids have done from day one. So that's in the letter from Dr. McGanny as well, in terms of having that conversation. We know that we will have questions. Other families will be questioning that their neighbors are doing the right thing. That is not new. Every time we have a change, as Trustee Collard said, yet we have seen that families are following the guidance. So we trust our communities, we trust our families, and we know that we will be expecting that students will come with masks sometimes. Students will come with masks all the time, and students may not come with masks at all. I know that a couple of schools, some of my schools, the administrators actually walked around classes prior to March break to talk about that. I would think a lot of our schools, there'll be some messaging around that within the school, whether it be on the PA system or whether it be class by class. Those conversations will be had with students in the classrooms so that they are, not in terms of checking in on each other, but just in recognizing that you will see sometimes kids will have masks and sometimes they won't.
Follow up, please. Just to clarify, so definitely it is the family's responsibility to have that conversation with their child, whether they're 5 years old or high school, that is they are accountable to keeping that mask off in that classroom until there was a mask break, for example. Okay, thank you.
And just a reminder, the masking requirement, kids will take masks off to eat and drink, right? And so that they will have that those same parameters in place.
Thank you. Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much. Through the chair to Director Ennis, we heard the word stability and predictability earlier in our presentation here today, and I think that those are really key descriptors for what our communities want when it comes to instruction of students. So my question is this: how well equipped is our school board to cover classes with teachers and support staff should there be an increase in infections and therefore staff absences occurring after the March break? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Trustee Gray. I know that as a school board, we have been highly responsive to the potential staff shortages in our schools. And I'll speak just to one of the initiatives that we've taken, and then I'll turn it over to Superintendent Taha. But we have put in place an initiative that is we provide flexible, supplies, additional floaters who are going into schools to support staff. And I can tell you, just based on my interaction with schools, it was highly desirable, it was highly effective. And I believe that Superintendent Taha can speak to our continuation of supporting schools in that regard. Go ahead, Superintendent Taha.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Director Ennis. Through Chair Shuttleworth to Trustee Gray. We've been, as others have pointed out, we've been sort of we've become experts, let's put it this way, with respect to dealing with change, being nimble and agile. And so for the last couple of years, we've been, as I pointed out several times, building a stockpile of casual employees across all of our employee groups, be it teaching groups or support staff, to withstand any of those ebbs and flows in terms of staff being absent for whatever reason. The initiative that Director Ennis has talked about, and that is the idea of deploying to schools what we call floater occasional staff, be it EAs or teaching staff, has paid dividends for us. We will continue to have those floaters, we call them, available till the end of the school year if possible and if needed. And we've also deployed central staff in pressure spots where we needed to have those employees deployed. What I can say to you is prior to the March break, and then I say this very cautiously, we've seen some improvement in our absenteeism rates. So we've stabilized in a way and we've weathered the storm. We hope to continue to weather the storm for the remainder of the school year. But having said that, if we need to reconsider our deployment strategy, if we need to add additional floaters or central staff, we will continue to do so. And we also haven't stopped recruiting. It's been literally since March of 2020, ongoing recruitment of occasional staff, support staff. So again, as I said, we've been experts at this, and we think we have all the tools and the strategies and the confidence that we will withstand any ebbs and flows in terms of increased absenteeism. Another thing I can point out is, as others have pointed out, so far we haven't, given the shift in the restrictions, the uplifting of certain health and safety measures, in particular masks, we haven't seen a rise in knock wood. We haven't seen a rise in staff, perhaps reaching out to health and wellness or disability management, with concerns. Now it's only Friday. We will see what next week brings, but we're prepared for that also. But for the time being, I think we should be okay. I'm very confident we'll be okay.
Superintendent Taha, if I could just jump in quickly, Chair Shuttleworth, would you speak to as well some of the staff who may not have been available to us in the last little while, who may be coming back on board due to the lifting of these restrictions? Superintendent Taha, sorry.
Sorry, can you repeat that, Director Ennis?
Yeah, no, I was asking if you'd be kind enough to speak to the staff who were not available to us due to the fact that we, took certain stance and measures, who may be coming back online. So that may further boost what your the supply that we have.
Absolutely. Through you, Chair Shuttleworth, to Trustee Gray and to Director Ennis. Yes, as we know, the requirements to be fully vaccinated have been lifted. And the requirements to participate in rapid antigen testing have been lifted as per the direction of the Ministry and the Chief Medical Officer of Public Health. We have approximately 500 employees between teaching and non-teaching staff that have been, for various reasons, unable to work. I can't 100% say that the reasons they haven't been able to work are these requirements. But it's reasonable to say that, or reasonable to assume that some of them, or most of them, should be returning back to the workforce come the March break. So we will have an influx of staff that have been Halton District School Board staff that will be returning to us. So that should mitigate some of those shortages. But again, I don't want to assume that they're returning simply because the restrictions have been lifted, but that could be the case, and that will help.
Thank you very much. May I have a follow-up on the same thread? So again, on the thread of staffing, this question to Director Ennis again, would you comment on any improvements that might be expected to take place with regards to the bus runs and cancellations of bus runs that were taking place prior to the March break? I'm not sure how many of them were taking place right up to the March break, but we did have a period of time where there were some cancellations. I wondered if you could talk about the staffing of that with regards, is there any stabilization of that?
Thank you for the question, Trustee Gray. I would imagine that with the lifting of certain restrictions and mandates that staff, including the bus staff and transportation or drivers in particular, we'll see an increase in the availability of staff in that regard. And I think that is going to be a very positive and promising thing for our students and our staff to see a reduction in possible cancellation of bus routes and delays and the things that we've experienced over the last little while. So I think we can reasonably assume that with all the lifting of the restrictions and mandates that we're going to be more robust in our staffing in the transportation regard.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Gray. So Vice Chair Harrison, you're up next, and then Trustee Grabentz to follow.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, and hello, everybody, and thanks for all of the information so far. Back in March 9th, which seems like ages ago at this point, I believe that's the day when this new set of ministry directives was issued, and there was a statement in there that some students and families may find the transition challenging, and school boards may receive requests for short-term remote learning option and are asked to consider accommodating these within the current capacities in virtual learning and in alignment with PPM 164. So I wonder, what is our ability within those teaching capacities to make accommodations? Have we seen a lot of that so far? And I would imagine, in addition to the move from in-person to virtual, there may also be requests such as, I need my student to sit beside the window, or other kind of preferential kinds of accommodations. So I just wonder how what we're seeing, what our ability is to manage those requests.
Thank you for the question, Vice Chair Harrison. I'm going to ask Superintendent Blackwell if she would speak to what we have been doing so far, and then I can add further if needed.
Thank you. Through the chair to the vice chair. So again, families should reach out to their school to look for options. If they're looking to move to virtual to the end of the year in an elementary school, that would be through the school principal as a request. If they are looking to, as we have, to look to return in person, same process. The secondary school's not as easy. As you know, there are specific courses, but secondary schools are very versed in providing strategies should a virtual need occur. Matching a timetable in VSS is very difficult based on each school having different course opportunities and timing. So again, through the school is the option. One of the things that I do want to make very clear, you mentioned, family requests to sit near a window, that sort of thing. Schools won't be honoring those requests. I think that the logistics, I think families need to recognize that the reality is, in a classroom, there will be students that are masked, there are students that are not masked, maybe they'll all be masked. And that is the environment. There are, cohorting is not an expectation anymore. I know that our elementary students outside, not having to stay in zones, that's the biggest thing that I'm hearing from the student voice, that they're very excited about the opportunity to cross that imaginary line outdoors. I think that families need to make the decision based on what they know about their child, what they know about the school, and then have the conversation regarding what that looks like with the school and or even the teacher. There could be multiple classes, for example, in a library. So to say, I always want my child sitting by a window is not going to happen. And I think that any of the concerns that they may have should actually be discussed with the school and get a real sense of what it is looking like, so that parents can make those choices and request if they still don't feel comfortable.
And if I may just add to Superintendent Blackwell, Vice Chair L. Harrison, what we absolutely cannot have in our schools is any kind of stratification of students, based on request that is going to alienate and isolate particular students in any way, shape, or form. What we're striving for is a continued inclusive environment where everyone feels like they belong, where everyone know that they matter, and that we are protective of that environment, to the fullest extent. And so I understand that some families may be disappointed in certain requests that they make, but our goal and our objective is to make sure that we are creating a harmonious school working environment where everyone feels like they belong. And it's, it's just something that we must continue to pay close attention to.
And if I could add to Director Ennis, who was adding to myself, one of the things that we do want to also recognize is that we are not looking to reorganize our system. We have done that multiple times over the past few years, and we know that where there are requests to return to in-person or requests to move to remote learning, that has an impact on not only those the students and families that are requesting that, but other students and families. We have students with the staff right now for a little bit of March, April, May, and June, to move kids into different classrooms and change teachers for different requests is not something that we are committed to doing as a board. That being said, if there is not room in person, it's because there are students that we do receive many requests to return to in-person learning, and where that can't be accommodated within their home school, we will be able to find another classroom for them, and it may be in a neighboring school.
Thank you. Trustee Grubetz.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. Of course, our system is made up of students and staff, and we of course need to make sure that our staff are okay. And we may have some staff that feel an increase in anxiety with the lifting of the masking mandate, either for their own health or for the health of those that are in their family that they live with who are young or immunocompromised. Are we providing any additional support for those staff?
Thank you for the question, Trustee Grubetz. I'm going to ask Superintendent Taha to begin this response.
Thank you, Director Ennis. Through you, Chair Shuttleworth, to Trustee Grubetz. A few minutes ago, Director Ennis and Superintendent Blackwell and the trustees pointed that this is all of this that we're going through is a collective responsibility on all of us. The Occupational Health and Safety Act is really predicated on this premise called the IRS, which is the Internal Responsibility System, which says all of us in an organization, be it supervisors, management, employees, have a collective responsibility to ensure that the workplace is safe and that employees are feeling well and confident coming to work. And this is what I can say. It's our responsibility to remind our staff who are feeling uneasy or a sense of anxiety that the workplace is safe, and to remind them that there are multiple layers that we can provide them with to ensure that the safety, their own safety, the safety of their families and their loved ones who may be immunocompromised. We've listed a host of interventions that are available to staff who are feeling, a sense of uneasiness coming to work, enhanced ventilation, screening, N95 masks, and so on and so forth. So those are all interventions that we will remind our staff that they're still available. Our employee assistant and support program, family support program is also available. And also when it comes to employees reaching out to human resources, to disability management with respect to their mental health and well-being, we'll manage those on a case-by-case basis. We have a duty to inquire, we have a duty to accommodate. And so in certain cases, there may be other interventions that we can afford staff, being the option to work remotely. We have to accommodate their needs, their limitations and restrictions. But again, we'll manage it on a case-by-case basis. Since day one, it's been patience, empathy, and compassion, and we'll continue that till the remainder of the school year.
Thank you so much. Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you. Through the chair to the director, I'm wondering if public health has had or has signaled to us how, with these changes, how they're moving forward with the monitoring and reporting cases in our school system. Has that changed? Are they still collecting data? Are they making it available to the public in real time? I'm sure that the reason why I'm asking this is I'm sure people are watching what is happening in other countries, and we're seeing resurgence of COVID cases. So there's that kind of overlay of who has eyes on what's going on and where is that being tracked?
Thank you for that, Trustee Reynolds. I'm going to ask Superintendent Blackwell to speak to this.
Thank you. Through the chair to Trustee Reynolds, great question, which I forgot to mention. The reporting is going to continue as per prior to March break. Every day, schools must report absences through the ministry reporting tool. That will continue, and those absences are available publicly through ontario.ca. We would continue to update public health. We have a duty to connect with public health where absence is greater than 30% above the baseline. That would continue where we would have that conversation with, or the school will have the conversation with public health. So that stays in place as well. The Ontario reporting tool, I know that the ministry has said in the latest direction that will continue till mid-April at a minimum. And so we will continue to update that. We have a board site that has any schools that are closed due to absences or under the direction of Halton Region Public Health. And we have not had any postings on that site since the changes to reporting.
Great, thank you. Are there any more questions? Trustee Oliver.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I do appreciate all the concerns expressed by our families, students, and staff as restrictions become lifted. I'd like to focus on our kindergarten students, and I know you've briefly touched upon that in our first series of questions. I'm sure all of us have had emails from parents of kindergarten students concerned about this particular age group. It's a subset of our student population that, as we know, does not qualify for vaccination. And so there is an expected level of concern and anxiety as these students are returning to school. However, I do believe that there are a number of intrinsic and extrinsic protective factors, both in our schools and in the community, that help to protect these young students. And I'm wondering if Superintendent Blackwell could help us to kind of recap or reflect on some of these things that exist, like vaccination rates, the layout of our schools, the exposures of these young students to the rest of the school population, because I think there's a lot of these are actually quite protective for the students.
Before Superintendent Blackwell respond, I just want to add, Superintendent Blackwell, don't go away. I'm going to need you. I just wanted to add, Trustee Oliver, how proud I am of our kindergarten students and, just how well they have managed through this. I can tell you, based on my experience in going to schools, that they have done an outstanding job. And I just see it everywhere. And I thought, when we first started, when I first started this year and going around to schools, I was just so elated to see the level of compliance by kindergarten students, our youngest, and many folks, including myself, wondered how they would fare through this, but they have done an incredible job. So to speak to your question, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Blackwell.
Through the chair to Trustee Oliver, I thought Director Ennis, being a former kindergarten teacher, would be all over this question. So I think, and thank you for the way you phrased the question, because I think that what you've shared is very important in terms of, what does it look like for learning in a kindergarten classroom? Because our families really haven't been in our schools to see the environment. Trustees prior to COVID will be very much aware of the large spaces that have been created for our kindergarten classrooms. It was a huge directive when full-day kindergarten came in terms of the design of the kindergarten classrooms. They are the largest spaces within our school classrooms. And they also have outdoor spaces available to them that are often just for kindergarten students. The other thing is they're often located in a certain area of the school. I know that when we talked about choices for French immersion, from changing it from grade 1 to grade 2, often families made choices moving to grade 1 because their kids really didn't know the school in kindergarten. And we said, having that opportunity to know grade 1 and now being part of the outer school. So that all being said, just to share that, there is an area, the kindergarten students are very much in a kindergarten wing, for a better term. Much of their learning is outdoors, much of their learning is in large spaces, and they also have their own washrooms and code areas within the kindergarten rooms. So that's what the layout looks like for kindergarten, and I think it's a very important point in terms of how they come to school and how they play at school and how they learn at school. So thank you for bringing that to the attention.
Thank you, Trustee Oliver. Trustee Collard.
Thank you. Through you to our student trustees, I'm always interested in knowing what students think and feel about the changes that are about to happen in school, and no one has their ear closer to that than our student trustees. So I would like to ask of them what they're hearing.
Thank you so much through the chair to Amy, thank you so much for that question. I can begin, and I'll pass it over to Trustee Bao. On my end, I think I've heard sort of a mixed response. Certainly there's concerns about returning to school, especially after March break and removing the masks. So I do know a lot of the students that I've talked to seem to be like that they're going to continue wearing masks. But there doesn't seem to be I don't know, a divide in the sense of anyone's really judging anyone else for wearing a mask or choosing not to wear a mask. I think everyone's kind of just making their own decision. On the other side, I've certainly heard from a lot of students who are excited about not having to wear a mask anymore. We have heard from people who've obviously come to the board meetings and spoken about it. So yeah, it's a mixed response, but overall, I think as long as everyone stays respectful and we remind each other of kind of the safety practices that are still in place, hopefully we have a smooth return back. I'll pass it over to Trustee Bao.
Thanks, Trustee Whitland-Cara, and thank you for this question. From my end, I've also heard a bit of a mixed response, but from most of the people that I've talked to, they've said that they are going to continue masking, and a lot of the students that I've talked to, they wish they would rather continue masking so that they can have an in-person graduation than not having that. So that's what I've heard.
Thank you. That's very helpful to have a student perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Collard. Vice Chair Harrison.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, the points made by Trustee Bao kind of segue into a question that I have just regarding what different types of masks are effective at doing. I remember early in the pandemic when cloth masks were what we had, the conversation was about kind of keeping our germs to ourselves or our droplets and so on. And then as things progressed, different types of masks were introduced to also filter what could potentially come from other places So I just wonder whether there's any resources out there that people could be pointed to be able to discern what the different maskings do and offer. Because I think it would be useful information to have. I think I'd also like to have that information for my own purposes.
Thank you, Vice Chair Harrison. Wondering if Superintendent Blackwell knows of the resources that are available so that we can all know the different efficacy of our medical grade PPEs.
Thank you, and through the chair to the vice chair. So there's lots of different information on masking, right? And there's different types of masking. So we know that our medical grade PPE for our staff is very much in terms of protecting themselves and protecting others. We know that non-medical masks are not necessarily in terms of protecting oneself, but protecting others. There is information on the Halton Region Public website around different types of masks. I know that the ministry, when they've provided us with, if you'll recall, when we returned from January closure, we were provided with 3-ply non-medical masks for students, and they will continue to be available at our school sites for students who may request or require additional masks. So long story short is there is information. I would go with the Halton Region Public Health website in terms of the types of masks that can be used. You know, we've had way back in the beginning of masking, we had the whole conversation around mingle masks and mesh masks, and those aren't masks, right? They don't protect anyone. And so I would encourage our families to read that information if they're looking for information through Halton Region Public Health.
Superintendent Taha, did you have anything to add?
No, I think Superintendent Blackwell captured it nicely. For staff, I just want to remind staff and remind everyone on this call that in addition to masks, if staff requests additional personal protective equipment, that is something that the board could offer in terms of face shields, goggles, gloves, gowns, and so on. So that's also an additional set of personal protective equipment that we can offer our staff. And we know that N95 masks are also available to the remainder of the school year.
Thank you. Vice Chair Harrison, do you have a follow-up or is it a different question?
It's a follow-up.
Okay.
Yeah, and that is just to say, as we're striving is not the right word. I'm struggling to come up with a better one, but we must have inclusive environments for people making whatever choice that they're making on masking. I wonder if there's a way to point people specifically to those resources. So just in order to facilitate that, like if we have a communication going out, this is certainly an operational thing, but I would just suggest that to take the guesswork out of it for people, if there are resources that we can somehow link somewhere, it might be helpful to facilitate that. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Vice Chair Harrison. Go ahead, Superintendent Blackwell.
Thank you. Through the chair to the vice chair, just a reminder that we have a mask wearing fact sheet on our board website, and communications has reframed what our website looks like, and it's front and center for our families should they require it.
Great, thank you very much. Trustee Grabetz.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say that I hope that people have empathy out there to understand that their actions can affect others. Personally, I will continue to be masking. My children will be masking in our facilities, and I hope people. I encourage people to still do it. It's a very small thing to do that could help other people. So I don't know if the board itself is encouraging, but I will personally be encouraging. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Brabantz. Are there any further questions for Director Ennis, Superintendent Blackwell, or Superintendent Taha, or anybody else at the table? Great, well, seeing none. Again, to those three in particular and to everybody at this table, thank you so much for answering all of our questions. We know these certainly aren't easy questions to answer, sometimes not even easy answers to hear. But I know through the caring concern that is so characteristic of our Halton District School Board community that we are going to be able to move forward knowing that everyone is doing their best that they can and are also at the same time able to more clearly understand the impact that the direction of the ministry has had on our schools. And thanks to the answers today, we're able to have that clarity. So I really do appreciate the time you've taken over your March break. Thank you so much. Director Ennis, did you have any concluding comments?
Thank you so much, Chair Shuttleworth. I just want to say a big thank you to staff, to Superintendent Blackwell for always being at the forefront of leading, giving us the leading edge information that we need to keep our students and staff safe, and to all senior staff for their work in leading our schools. The words that I heard today were empathy, inclusion, harmony, patience, understanding, kindness. I think if we keep those at the forefront of moving forward, we cannot go wrong. So I know that there will be different opinions, but I think if we keep those as some core guiding principles, we're going to be okay. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Director Ennis. As we end this meeting, I want to take this time to remind everyone to be kind. Please take care of yourself and one another. In line with the Children's Health Alliance, I encourage everyone to feel comfortable in continuing to wear masks at schools. The Children's Health Coalition has further recognized that they are so pleased the Chief Medical Officer of Health is continuing to encourage masking. And as Superintendent Blackwell has stated, schools and the government are making rapid testing broadly available. All of these are measures to keep our schools safe. If our communities continue to follow the screening tools, stay home if they feel ill, wear masks when necessary, we will be able to continue to reduce the absenteeism and support the sustained in-person learning that makes the Halton District School Board a great place to live and learn. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I appreciate your time. Have a great weekend before the return to school on Monday. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.